Thank you.
Okay, so welcome everybody. I will. Okay, I'm not sure what else Sister Eileen has told you, but I would invite you to make today quite interactive. I welcome questions throughout the day, except when we are meditating. Otherwise, at any time, you can raise your hand, stop me, and pose a question, challenge whatever I say. So I welcome all that. Second thing I'd like to say is, as a student of Ajahn Brahm, I totally agree with his views that meditation is an exercise of the mind, not of the body. So you're welcome to use chairs, sit against the wall, lean against, traditionally not done, but you're also welcome to lie down on the floor if that suits your back. Just don't point your feet at the Buddha. That's out of respect. But otherwise, throughout the day, please put yourself at ease as much as possible. Okay. Okay. So I'd like to introduce the teaching on the five aggregates. You've heard, I think when you're part of BF, I imagine most of you would have heard about it before. So the Buddha, in one of his teaching schemes, came up with this model called the five aggregates. It's just another way of looking at living beings. So the idea is that all living beings have a form, and within that form, it has five senses: the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, and the skin, the body. And this body needs to be fed, and it also provides all the contact with the outside world. And then, apart from the body, there are three automatic processes. In fact, all of them are automatic processes, but the three, when you have any sensory contact, you will always have immediately a reaction, whether you like it, don't like it, or you're neutral towards it, the Vedana, or sometimes translated as the feeling. But in this case, it's always related to whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Then directly from that you will also have a perception. You will give things you see or sense or hear a meaning. It's just like there's sound going into your ears now, but you understand it as words, and it's translated into meaning. And that's the perception function within this model. And then arising from your feeling and your perception, you will have a reaction, which we normally call your your sankhara, which is also your volitional action, what you do in reaction to those two input functions or mental processing functions. You can think of one as your heart processing function and one is your head processing function. And in reaction to that, you will respond. So, for example, if somebody offered you durian, you may react strongly to it as I like or I don't like. And then you always understand it as most of us Asians will recognize durian, right? And then out of that, your volitional action is, smells good, I like, I want. You might reach out and grab some, or you might say, I don't like. And you will pinch your nose and turn away. And that's your sankhara reaction. And all these three functions is based on your past conditioning. Whether you like it or not, depends on whether your family liked it or not, whether they gave you that durian experience and how they reacted to it, stuff like that. And all that conditioning, the way I understand it, it's not very clear in the suttas as far as I read it, is in the fifth element of the five khandhas, which is your consciousness. It seems to be that from there you choose what you like and what you don't like because of conditioning. So on the subject of today's, on the theme of today's workshop, this idea of moods and thoughts, it's thought, by the way, comes in very much in the fourth of the five khandhas. Your thinking process. The second and the third, that first reaction, it's very immediate. The moment you see, like, don't like, happens instantly. The meaning happens instantly. Bell. You see this as bell because everybody, or not everybody, but earlier in your life, somebody told you this is bell. It sounds like bell. And our mind doesn't have the ability to interpret this as a car. Because of previous conditioning that's stored in your views, your consciousness. But if you have the inclination, you will start thinking, wow, actually it's a nice bell, it sounds very nice, and it might have been here for a while because the bronze is a bit aged, tarnished, and so then all that is part of your thinking process. The additional in our suttas, the word papancha is normally translated as proliferations or fermentations, additional processes apart from the first direct contact of perception. And elsewhere in one sutta, the Buddha goes on to say, your papancha is the one that creates most of the trouble for you, most of the suffering for us. That's the part when you start thinking, I don't know why they put the bell here. Is it because they want me to... and your thoughts go on and on and on, and you... But of course, for us all, a bell like this, apart from saying it's very nice, it sounds nice, the mind doesn't pick it up anymore. It leaves it alone. The one, personally, I find most engaging for the mind are words. Words you hear from somebody else. The Vedana comes in quite often, especially words we find unpleasant. And then we start interpreting, well, he just insulted me. And then from there, your sankhara will tell you a lot of stories about those words. And your thoughts will go on and on and on. I should mention one thing else. After we do all our papancha, all our proliferations, we'll come to conclusions. He's a mean fellow, he's all those thoughts add to your consciousness because you are conscious of what you think. And when it goes into your consciousness, it now becomes new material for processing the future inputs. Because now I no longer like that guy. Whatever he now says, I will start saying, well, I disagree with that. And so you can see that there are many feedback loops within these five khandhas. And quite often, the negativity feedback loop is strongest. And that's what we need to be careful of. So within the consciousness, there are other things under that big umbrella term called views, how you believe the world. how you understand the world, how you view the world. So you might see the world as a nice, pleasant place. So when we get into this hall in 310 Lavender Road, we generally have a good feeling. People here are nice and friendly. People are very helpful. People here generally guard their speech well and they don't say nasty things. So we can actually relax here. But some other environments, you might feel a bit more anxious because it doesn't feel so safe. People are a bit more unguarded with their speech. You may have had bad experiences in those places, so now when you see that house or apartment or office, you already have, I'll use the word prejudice, but it may be more factual than speculation. So, as you can see, stuff in our heads prefer some stuff and is prejudiced against some stuff, or some scenarios, people, situations. As a start for today's exploration, I like to point out that Ajahn Brahm said something that at first stood out in my own mind as a sore thumb. As Sister Eileen said, I used to be an engineer and I used to think in very logical terms. For me, formulas explain a lot of things. And which was why then when I found the opportunity to learn under Ajahn Brahm, it made a lot of sense to me. He was a theoretical physicist who speaks straight down the line, doesn't bend the stories like a salesman. I imagine that's your experience as well. When he says something, he's very clear in his own mind what he's talking about, and he doesn't. When you have that, you don't bend stories to suit your argument. But he said this thing. He says, meditation is more of the work of the heart than the work of the mind. There's more emotion involved in it than just methods. And I took a long time to figure out what he meant. And then he said another thing in a different talk. And he says, the breath is his best friend. When he sits with his breath, it's like sitting with a very good friend next to you, somebody whom you trust completely, somebody you know will look after you, take care of you, will never play you out. And of course, over the years, you then sit meditating with those words in mind, and I now take those same words to 𝐴𝒏𝒏 prison, which is down the road from the monastery. And interestingly, guys in 𝐴𝒏𝒏 prison can relate to these concepts. And of course, for them, when they go inside, and what they feel is a lot of pain, a lot of disappointment, a lot of heartache. But they can sit with that heartache and sadness out of compassion. The idea is this: if I saw somebody on a park bench, and that person on the park bench has got vomit all over himself, dirty, haven't showered, haven't washed his clothes for months, kind of thing, what would be your reaction? Most of the time, we'll just turn away, right? We'll call social service and say, please deal with it. For us, something uncomfortable is something that the mind automatically turns away from. Your sensory input tells you dirty, your Vedana says unpleasant, your perception says too much trouble, too well. And your reaction? Turn away. And that is also what happens when you sit in meditation. If you perceive the space inside as uncomfortable, you close your eyes and you have disappointments, you have sadness, you have anger, your mind would rather be elsewhere. And that's when you pick up thoughts, pick up fantasies, and go away from here. On the other hand, if you look at that person a bit more closely, and you recognize, hey, that's my classmate. I used to play with him. Now, even though the Vedana says uncomfortable, unpleasant, the mind now has an inclination to say, I want to help. I want to take care of him. You might pull him up, walk him to even your home, wash him up, give him fresh clothes, feed him, and then find out how else you can help. You will undertake all that discomfort because you care, right? How do you apply that? So now what happens is when you go inside, if you find any discomforts, starting with bodily discomforts, most people, when they have pain, oh, it's so painful, I get terrible stomach ache. Get me something to get rid of it. How do I get rid of that stomach pain? If on the other hand you recognize, oh, my poor stomach, this stomach has been taking care of me for so long and feeding me and nourishing me. I want to take care of my stomach. Again, although the Vedana senses it as something uncomfortable, perception says something is wrong, but because of an inclination, an intention to care, you don't try and go, right? You rather do something like that. And so that's the first experiment we want to try this morning, to go inside and carry inside as much kindness as possible. Whatever discomforts we come across, the underlying mood is to care. Because this is the childhood friend that we've always played with from young. We want to take care of this friend. Okay? So yes, so let's try. Shall we try? Do you prefer the space to be a bit dimmer? As I was saying, this is primarily the work of the mind and the heart, not so much the body. So if you feel more comfortable on the chair, please use a chair. I also encourage you, as the day goes on and if you feel more tired and you think the cushion on the floor doesn't suit your purpose, change posture. This is not one of those hardcore sit straight meditation retreat. This is a very gentle meditation retreat. Okay. Yeah, so as you sit there, close your eyes. And I would like to invite you to bring your attention to the abdominal area first. Try and relax your stomach muscles as well as the muscles at the back, the lumbar area. I think they call it antagonist muscles. The stomach muscles and the back muscles move in opposite direction. One pulls you backwards, the other one bends you forwards. And when you get the strength balance, your body is upright. But quite often, these two muscles pull more tightly than is necessary. So if you can, relax the muscles in the front as well as the back, such that the tension is just enough to keep you upright with as little effort as possible. Then also relax those muscles on the left and right of the stomach. And one of the first sensations you might feel is that now the stomach area, the gut area, seems a bit more relaxed, as if there's more space for the stomach and intestines to work, to process your breakfast. This area is much more relaxed and not at all tense. And you can feel the stuff that, as if now you can feel the stomach and the intestines doing their squeezing, what they call the peristaltic movements, churning the food, getting it digested. When you quiet the mind and relax the muscles, we automatically become more sensitive to what goes on inside. And when this happens, you'll also notice the breath. You realize that the breath comes to you. You don't have to go looking for the breath. And in this state of relaxation, the breath actually feels quite pleasant. Now, I'd like to introduce your breath to you as your best friend. This is a childhood friend that we don't always remember to keep in touch with, but it's also a friend who will hang out with us until our dying day. Guaranteed. Where else can you find a friend who will be so loyal and so faithful? And with that underlying thought, get to know the breath. The more goodwill and loving kindness that you bring into your interaction with the breath, the more pleasant this experience will be. It's just like when you meet up with your friends, if there's a tidak apa kind of a atmosphere, the friendship doesn't seem very deep. But if you have quiet moments where you can connect, the friendship deepens. Next thing I want to point out is that there's actually a sense of joy, not just in the physical sensation of the breath, but the joy of friendship, of having a friend in front of us, with us. And if you indulge in this joy of friendship, And together with this pleasure of the rising and falling, your attention is drawn towards that breath, the source of our joy and pleasure. Many of you would have heard Ajahn explain that it's not the object that is important, but the relationship in between the object and the observer. What is in between that is more important? When you view the breath, when you experience the breath, this idea of kindness and goodwill does two things for us. One, it holds your attention to the breath with practically no effort required. It's just so attractive. Second, when that quality in between is one of kindness and goodwill, there's very little agitation. You don't have to do a lot of thinking. You don't have to solve any problems. You're sitting here with a good friend, totally trustworthy, totally reliable, totally safe. Now, for all of the rest of today's exercises, and of course for all your future meditation sits as well, I strongly recommend to always have this idea of sitting with a friend and appreciating the presence of the friend. I'll keep quiet for a few minutes I'd like you to experience this. Notice the quality of the connection in relation to how still the mind is. The more you're drawn to the friend, the more the mind is at rest. The less the connection, the more the mind will run around. Okay. You'll probably notice that this goodwill feeling sometimes runs dry, and then the mind starts wandering, and that's quite normal. And often it's possible to just remind yourself of the pleasure of the breath, that comes from a relaxed body and also the pleasure of friendship that comes from good intentions, goodwill, and metta. I'm going to end this sit in about a minute. Please enjoy your breath and then come out at the end of the third bell. Questions? Comments? Okay, good. Any questions about the concept of being friends with your breath? Did you find it easy to do? Did it help hold your attention? Worked? As I was saying, we try to keep that relationship going throughout the rest of today's exercises. What we will do next is to try and practice working together with the breath. You know how if you were given a chore to do, go clean the kitchen, go wash the dishes, go sweep up the garden, or whatever the chore is, a lot of times it's a lot more fun to do when you have a good friend doing it together with you, rather than to have to do it alone. Yeah. when we do the body sweep exercise, the one where you relax your feet, then relax your legs, you relax your ankles, relax the knees. If you had a partner to do it with, it feels as if like, if imagine this, if you were working in an old folks' home and you had to help all the uncles and aunties bathe them, help them change clothes, tidy up their beds, and bring them to the dining table, feed them, and then bring them to the toilets, whatever. If two of you were to work together, it feels a bit more pleasant, I think, to have a partner, to have two people who mutually understand each other very well. You don't have to give each other instructions. You don't berate each other. Why are you so silly? No, don't do it this way, do it that. But if you could be connected in such a way, a little glance tells you, yes, we need to bring uncle up, her fire up in the chair. A little glance says, okay, I'll take care of the waters, you take care of the food. Having a friend like that makes working so much more pleasant, right? So imagine now if we have a tummy ache and you want to relax that tummy. What if the mind could bring all the goodwill and the kindness and the compassion and the rising and falling of the breath were to give that tummy, that little part of your intestine where there's an air pocket or tightness, a massage. And the massage is in time with the breath. And it would be such a peaceful piece of cooperation. Very gentle, very soothing for the mind, for the breath, as well as for the part of the body you're attending to. Right? So that would be the next idea that I want to try with a sit. Again, the idea that as we do this, there's always a tendency to dislike uncomfortable stuff, to turn away from uncomfortable stuff. So any idea of kindness and compassion, of caring, helps the mind to overcome those uncomfortable bits. Just like the friend who is on the park bench, if you care for that person, dirty also never mind, you will help the person, right? We will do a bit of this. Go in, look at the various body parts, look at from the abdominal area up to the chest area, up to the neck, up to the head. And whatever discomforts we encounter, we try to help clean house and make the inside space more comfortable. I'll tell you a story now that may help you explore some of the things we want to address. So I was teaching this group called the Armadale Meditation Group. I don't know whether you guys are aware of it. Used to be Ajahn Brahm started this thing 30 odd years ago. He would travel half an hour from the monastery to this place called the Armadale Hospital. And the Armadale Hospital was a little regional community hospital. And they had a community health center where I suppose they deal more with the community as in general rather than individuals. And within that center, there's a hall that could hold maybe 80, 100 people. And many people would turn up. And And they did it every night, every Tuesday night for ages. I remember driving Ajahn Brahm there. And then this thing got suspended, or rather it was transferred online because of COVID. And from then on, we junior monks started to take slots instead of just Ajahn Brahm alone teaching. So just recently in January, I did one slot. And I gave the same instructions that you just had. Go inside, be friends with your breath. The connection keeps the attention and it helps you address uncomfortable bits. A hand rose up. This was all on Zoom. What if the breath don't want to be friends with me? And at first, we all laughed. That's a funny question. What do you mean breath don't want to be? Then I started thinking, I think I understand the concept. It's a bit like if you go to a dentist and you're sitting there in the waiting room. These days, dentists all make appointments, so you don't normally wait in the waiting room very long. But if imagine you were sitting there in the waiting room and there were only two of you, and this other person is somebody you had a quarrel with. It would feel totally opposite from sitting there with your best friend, right? And instead of being able to sit with your best friend and talk for 2 hours in a coffee shop, suddenly sitting there in the waiting room for 5 minutes seems really uncomfortable. And I was thinking maybe she was experiencing something like that. The space inside has got a monster that she's uncomfortable with. So I explained it more or less like that and said, is there some part of yourself that you don't like? Is there some part of yourself that you want to destroy, that you're unhappy with, that you want to get rid of? That's probably why your breath doesn't feel like a friend. Anyway, she didn't say much more, so we did the meditation, sat there for 40 minutes or so, and then finally, ding, and we all came out. Any questions, any comments? And then she said, what you said just now, I didn't know this affects my meditation. But when I was small, my father said to me, I don't want you as my daughter. And she realizes that it has been bugging her such that she has trouble sitting quietly in meditation. Obviously, this was a thought that, an event that happened 20, 30 years ago. And yet, it caused that space inside to be quite uncomfortable. So the question then she asked, what can we do about it? And of course the textbook answer is, forgive lah. And of course we all know, easier said than done lah. So it took me a while as I think forgive is always the answer. Even if you don't know where he is now, on your own side, forgive. But my understanding of upekkha, equanimity, I always had the idea that to have equanimity, you always need to have a bit of wisdom. If you understood what was going on in the big picture, if you understand why people get greedy, why people get selfish, if you saw somebody selfish and it's very easy to hate that person. But when you then understand, the Buddha said, the 5 khandhas, for most people, you see something, you like it, and you perceive it as good for me, your reaction is, I want, I take. So selfishness is easily explained by the five khanda model. It's only when your view tells you that selfishness, you win in the short term, you lose in the long term. It's only when you understand that then you yourself don't be selfish. If the other person doesn't have that understanding, selfishness is a natural part of the five khanda model. It's a natural part of samsara, natural part of the natural world. So I wanted, okay, she needs to understand samsara, why her father said that. So I asked her, so now we know about your childhood, roughly, what you heard from your father when you were young. What do we know about your father's childhood? Then she started shaking her head. She doesn't know very much about her father's childhood because her father, from the sound of things, wasn't very present in her life. But she said her mother's youth was not very pretty. She remembers her childhood as mother working as a single parent at a farm, working for somebody else's farm, working very hard to try and maintain her children, to feed her children. Which means I'm guessing the father's childhood probably wasn't much better. And then I'm guessing this lady is probably about 20 plus 30, which means her father would probably be 50 plus, which means her grandfather would probably be 80 plus, 90 maybe. Which means her father probably had to live through World War II. And she was from Hong Kong. World War II in Hong Kong, Guangzhou, Nanjing area was pretty horrible. There was this massacre in Nanjing called the Rape of Nanjing, if some of you may know. So my guess was grandfather was probably an angry, depressed person. Possibly grandfather, grandmother persecuted by the invaders. So if father had to live under grandfather like that, it is quite understandable why father said things carelessly and was not very present, because his own her grandfather probably wasn't very pleasant either. But if you want to blame grandfather, you also have to blame the Japanese invasion, the armies who did. And then, no lah, you can't blame the army boys, but you got to blame the generals and the emperor who started the war. But can you blame the emperor who started the war? Shouldn't you blame the father of that emperor who brought... And then you realize, actually, like we were saying, if you didn't understand where selfishness came from, and if most people don't understand that selfishness only works in the short term, of course people will start war, people will fight, and people get depressed. And depressed people will pass on the depression and the anger to the next generation. So you're the lucky one, the 30-year-old living in the modern world who is attending a meditation session on Zoom. Now perhaps we can forgive. So, okay. We're going to do the next sit in in about 3 minutes, 5 minutes. If you need the toilet, if you need to stretch, please carry on. I'm not very particular about protocols and strictness and all that. Please, at any time you feel like, do what you need to do. while we wait for the rest, I had an interesting question. So this is the diversion a bit. At the end, this whole meditation exercise, the end goal is sama samadhi, right? Stillness, as Ajahn Brahm translates it. And sama samadhi is not an end goal in itself. Sama samadhi is part of the Eightfold Path, which serves the Fourth Noble Truth, or which is the Fourth Noble Truth, which serves the Third Noble Truth, which is the ending of suffering. And the process is such that when you have sama samadhi, the mind is so still and clear and bright, it starts to understand the kind of wisdom the Buddha understood. That there are these 5 khandhas, and these khandhas drive us crazy, and they get us into all sorts of trouble. And there's a lot of wisdom that we need to understand in order to arrive at the end of suffering. That this whole craving business is driving us round and round, and that there's such a thing called karma, which is also another way of describing a network of 5 khandhas interacting. And then to eventually come to a conclusion that says, this whole life after life after life, it seems quite pointless. Even something pleasant, like eating durian, just keeps you going on and on and on and on. And then at that point, the mind starts looking for a way out, which is Nibbana. And a few steps before that, it is through this stillness that then you start having what the suttas describe as revulsion, dispassion, before you get to cessation. And the revulsion and the dispassion is towards all the nonsense, all the fights that we have, all the cravings that we have. So, from that point of view, looking back at what we have just done in the first part earlier, in the last hour and a half, the idea of using the breath, using kindness, using this pleasure of the breath, it's a stepping stone. It's the first few steps to help our minds calm down, to help our minds have an anchor to hold on to, so that it stops wandering. If it keeps wandering, it keeps looking for trouble, it keeps looking for negativity, the mind is very busy. Anything that you're not contented about, anything that you don't like, you need to fix. The mind needs to fix. If you keep thinking of work and you have trouble at work, you keep thinking about how to fix those troubles. You have words that you have heard and you don't agree with those words. Now you need to fix or correct those words. So any negativity makes the mind busy. Any craving also makes the mind busy. Anything that you haven't got yet and you want. Or even something that you already have, but you fear losing, also keeps the mind busy. Contentment, on the other hand, is the thing that says, I'm very, very happy here. I got nothing else to do. I don't need to get anything else. So, the breath, the pleasure of the breath, the kindness and the caring moves our mind towards this direction. And that's what we are using here as the initial few steps. Later on, if your breath disappears and the mind is still still, your breath will become very, very subtle when you're Your mind don't have to think, your body don't have to move. You don't need very much oxygen. The breath will automatically slow down. At that point, you don't need to go looking for a breath and say, where's the pleasure of my breath? Wait. The Radha says you must go have pleasure. No, at that point you can let go of the breath. And if deeper down, the suttas go on to say, when the pleasure has faded, the rapture has faded, the mind rests in equanimity. That's all part of the path, and that's further down. If you get there straight away now, very good. You can graduate from this class, go and talk to Ajahn Brahm. It's beyond me. So this is a beginner's class. All right, so now that you're all comfortable, let's do the second sit. Like I was saying earlier, if you found yourself fidgeting because of physical discomfort and you believe you are more comfortable in a chair or leaning against the wall, please do so. Be kind to your body. Sitting with your eyes closed, let's bring our attention back to the abdominal area again. If you've been happy and contented, the abdominal area might still be relaxed and comfortable. On the other hand, if we've been anxious and tense, the muscles here might have unconsciously tightened up again. Relaxing the front muscles and the back muscles. For me, this relaxing of the front muscles and back muscles feels like opening the front door of your own home. Coming home. And straight away we are greeted by our best friend. The joy of meeting an old friend again. It's very reassuring. So let's start together with the breath. We examine if there's any tightness or discomforts within the abdominal area. The rising and falling of the breath gives you the feeling as if you're looking for something within your say your dirty laundry, whether it's in the pockets or somewhere else in the pile, the rising or falling helps to suss out, highlight any of the discomforts. And when you find any discomforts, the intention is not to persecute and get rid of, but instead to care and to comfort. The other thing that happens when you care and comfort is that we are not in a rush to fix anything. Any improvements or recovery will happen in its own time. Just like the story of trying to grow a little beanstalk out of a little bean, a seed. The job of the child or the farmer is to provide the right conditions, the warmth, the nurturing, but the growth, the recovery happens at its own pace. Whatever the discomforts you notice, allow the breath to gently massage that part. Imbuing it with lots of kindness and goodwill. Now let's allow this sense of relaxation to spread upwards to the thoracic area, the chest area. Just as we had relaxed the abdominal muscles, now we allow the muscles in the chest, between the ribs, between the shoulder blades at the back, to all relax. Again, letting the body stay upright with as little effort as possible. Then you notice that the breath now covers a bigger zone. Allow the breath to spread kindness and tenderness throughout this whole space. If you encounter any discomforts, do the same thing. Let the rise and fall gently massage that little part of the body. We can then move our attention further up again to the neck area. Muscles of the neck holds the head upright. And if that head can be held upright with as little effort as possible again, then these muscles can rest. As you do this, continue to have a sense of goodwill and caring towards the neck. And from the neck, you can shift the attention to the jaw muscles, the muscles that help us chew our food. As well as the facial muscles. And the muscles around the eyes. Check out also the muscles that rotate the eyeballs. All these muscles on the face, on the jaw, sometimes even the body, we have a habit of using them as our bulletproof vest. When we don't feel safe, these muscles tighten up subconsciously. But now, sitting amongst friends who have all declared the 5 precepts, I will not kill, I will not steal, I will not cheat, I will not lie, I will not harm. We can allow all these muscles to rest, as if we are putting down a superhero uniform. Now let's bring the attention to the brain, just behind the forehead. Even though there are no nerve endings in the brain, often we perceive the brain to be tired and squashed. as if we've been squeezing the juices out of the brain for too long and too hard. Imagine breathing, inhaling fresh air into your cranium area before the breath goes down to the lungs. Imagine exhaling the tiredness. See if the process of inhaling can be used to fluff up the brain a bit, to uncrumple, unsquash the brain. And remember to do all this with intentions of kindness and caring. Let the mind and the breath spread kindness and metta as they do their acts of love. Okay. Now, I'd like to introduce a slightly new concept. You know how, up to now, this mind and the breath have been attending to all the different body parts? Imagine if you have done the rounds and you have put all your patients in a comfortable place. The mind and the breath can go to their stations and take a short break. Bring the mind and the breath to a quiet space away from the body. As if they draw a curtain around and look after each other. I'm going to keep quiet for the next 10 or 15 minutes. Allow the breath and the mind this private time to rest. If this space is filled with kindness and compassion, goodwill and gentleness, it becomes a very comfortable place to hang out. Okay, now you're all very nice and peaceful at the moment. I would like to use this opportunity to do two experiments. As you are sitting there, enjoying the in and out breath, see if you can notice the sensations that causes the body to inhale. What triggers the body to suck in a breath? Then also go and explore what triggers the body to exhale and blow out the breath. You probably realize that it takes a very tiny bit of discomfort to make the body react. Now let's see, with that level of sensitivity, to go explore if there are similar kinds of discomfort in our hearts. Go to the heart area where all our emotions may reside. And see if there are any injuries or discomforts there. Just as we had done with the abdominal area earlier, allow the breath to shake things up a little bit, to ruffle through the laundry, as it were, to highlight any of those discomforts. Make sure the mind and this whole space inside is full of kindness and compassion, goodwill and caring. If you discover any aching pains, let the breath massage the heart and give it space to heal. As we come to the last 2 minutes, perhaps the two good friends, the breath and the mind, would like to take 2 minutes together and reconnect. Allow the mind and the breath enjoy each other's good company and goodwill. Questions, comments? How do you go?
Thank you. I found a bit uncomfortable when you asked us to look for discomfort. So, the meditation became uncomfortable. And after a while, it was okay. After a while, I found there's a chest pain. So I'm curious what might there be and what purpose does it serve to look for discomfort? Thank you.
As in the case of that lady who said, what if breath doesn't want to be friends with me? I've come across it a lot of times. Okay, here's another story. May last year, a group of Malaysians from Buddhist Fellowship in KL, a few of them, 18 of them, I think, flew down to Perth, stayed at Jana Grove. They had one whole week in Jana Grove before Wesak Day. And then some of them stayed another week after Vesak Day at Dhammasara, and they went to visit Albany and stuff like that. But Sister Dolly, their organizer, went up to Ajahn Brahm and said, there amongst these 18, there are a few newbies who haven't done much meditation. Can Ajahn teach? Then Ajahn said, Malaysian monk, you go and teach. And so me and another friend, Rebel Jayako, he's from Penang. I said, I'll do the morning and afternoon, you do the night. So we did morning, noon, afternoon and night. Then after about 3-4 days, halfway through the week, right? I looked around the crowd and I was telling them right from the start, same thing I say, you're my customer, tell me what you want, and I'll try and do what I can. But I also told them, you're on holiday, you have 1 whole week staying in Jhana Grove. For meditators, that's paradise. Good food, blue skies, weather not hot, not cold. Put on one jacket, it just feels like an aircon room. No worries. And it turned out to be meteorite season that time. And you know how it is in Singapore. You look up, it's all orange sky. You go to Australia, look up at night, full of stars. There's no light pollution, not in Jhana Grove, not in Bodhinyana. And because it was meteorite season, you looked in the east direction at 4:30 a.m. in the morning, you actually see shooting stars. But 3rd day, 4th day, I looked down, how come people still cannot smile? You're on holiday, the conditions are perfect, but cannot smile. So I read them one sutta, the simile of the cloth. And the Buddha says, if I had a piece of cloth, dirty, oily, stained, and you go and soak it inside a dye pot, if you pull it up, would it look pretty? Obviously not. With oil stains, some patch will have color, some patch will not have color, some patch, the old stains will still show. But if you have a bright, clean cloth and you dip it inside a dye and you pull up, the cloth looks very nice. The colors are very even and bright. Similarly, the Buddha says, if your mind has got all the defilements, it's not going to lead to a bright color. If your mind is clean and pure and you dip it inside kindness, happiness, joy, and you pull it up, it will have the color of happiness and joy. And then the Buddha goes on to say, what are the defilements of the mind? Greed, anger, envy, jealousy, hatred, resentment, rivalry, competitiveness, conceit. And the last one was negligence, carelessness. And you look at the category, right? I think he listed something like 11 different words in that sutta describing the stains of the mind. They broadly fall into 3 categories, which is greed or greed, lust, anger, aversion, or delusion, carelessness, or combinations of them, such as envy and jealousy. I want but I hate at the same time. After I read that sutta, everybody kept quiet, and then you can see them thinking. And as usual, as these things happen, later on, okay, end of session, let's go have a break. And then you hear all the private questions. All the private questions that people have been keeping. So the idea of going inside is to go and discover, just like this lady from Hong Kong, what else is in there that is making you uncomfortable? If it's normal physical bodily pains, that's inevitable. That's what the Buddha calls the first dart or the first arrow. Sometimes we proliferate, we tell stories, the sankhara gives you a lot of thinking, and you come to a lot of conclusions that says things like, maybe I did something wrong, maybe I am unworthy, maybe I'm no good, maybe I'm not lovable. And when you come to those conclusions, then when you sit inside, it's almost like this is your bedroom, but there's something rotting in the corner, and there's another old rubbish all sitting the other side, haven't been thrown out yet. And then there's this part of the room has got rubbish that hasn't been cleared. So what I was hoping to do just now is to go and look for all this stuff that we need to clean house. And if we can, then clean house. Hopefully then the space inside here becomes a really comfortable bedroom. A space where you can relax. Make sense? Of course, when everything is nice and good, and you don't have these issues, by all means, skip, and go. Just hang out with the breath and enjoy. Yeah. Any other comments? Yes.
Thank you, Ajahn. I just want to know, what if the breath go away? I mean, you hang out very peacefully, but suddenly you just go away and then...
Not a problem. It's actually a good sign. As I don't know, maybe you were out in the toilet. We were waiting for people to come back from the toilet, so I was explaining just now from an earlier question. If you remember Anapanasati, are you familiar with that sutta? Basically, in that sutta, people remember 16 steps for breath meditation. Somewhere in the fourth step, you pacify bodily sensations. And that is interpreted as allowing the breath to disappear, allowing the whole body to disappear. When that happens, it means the body is so relaxed and the mind is so relaxed, it doesn't need a lot of oxygen anymore. So the breathing becomes ever more shallow. And so long as the mind is not agitated, it is peaceful, it is soaked inside happiness, that's a good sign. Here's another clue. Again, I'm a beginner meditator myself, a lot of things I've not experienced. But you've heard Ajahn Brahm describe nimittas before? So nimittas come at a point when the mind ignores the body and only notices the object in front. The object in front appears to most people as a bright and very beautiful light. The way Ajahn explains it, the mind, because the five senses are shut off, there are no more inputs from the five senses. So what can that light be? The mind, that light is mind created. The mind is not an object different from the mind itself. The way the Buddha explains consciousness, the way Ajahn explains consciousness is, there's no TV set and an image on the TV. The image is the TV. It's not a container and the content. It's one thing. So the light is the mind, the light is the consciousness is the mind. The mind is watching itself getting brighter and brighter and brighter. the happiness grows and therefore it looks bright. That's how Ajahn explains nimittas. So at some point, as you get there, your five senses shut off. Starting with the rest of the body first, but eventually the breath also. So, good sign. Your next question should be directed to Ajahn Brahm. I'm not qualified to answer. Okay, so it's lunchtime. I will still take questions after lunch over any other things that you have experienced so far this morning. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Venerable. Okay, let us pay respects before lunch. Okay, Brother Yi-Kun will accompany Venerable down. The rest, you can go by the staircase. Also, please eat mindfully downstairs, not up here. In the classroom. All are vegetarian lunch box. So